August 28th, 2020. I'm Betsy Crossley and currently president-elect, but I'm acting in the stead of Keely Hall, our president, who is currently taking his baby to college. I remember that, and it was very difficult, but time flies, right? Today, I'm going to ring the bell to start the meeting officially. That made Sarah's dog bark. Sana Robinson this morning has our invocation, and after that, we're going to have Lena Stugis to honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance and honor Rotary with the four-way test. Sana?
Thank you, Betsy. Would you please bow your heads and pray with me? Father God, we come humbly to you today with warnings going on around us, with disruption of government and lots of issues with racial injustice and protests and political discord all around us. But we come to you today with quiet hearts and with humble hearts, asking that you will be with us as Rotarians and help us find the way forward, that we can help in all of these situations that are making lives so difficult for people who are just trying to survive during this COVID environment. We ask that you do pay close attention to those people that have been affected by Hurricane Laura down in Texas and Louisiana, who may have lost their home or their livelihood or even family members. And we ask that you restore that area and give it a chance to regrow back to where it was previously before the hurricane came. And we ask that you be with our Rotary Club as we continue to try to find the way forward in helping Tennessee Baptist Children's Home and Grace Works and Saddle Up and all the charities that we work with. Our students be with all of our college students who are having a difficult time this fall, Father, having to learn remotely or not having the college experience that they had hoped for. We hope that you'll be with all of our children as they're in school and keep them safe and keep our schools open. And we ask that you be with those in our club who are having health issues, Roger Wheelwright and the Stokes and the Fiddlers and anyone else whose name I've neglected to mention. Be with us today as we gather and learn together and give together, Lord, and protect us as we go through the week next week. We ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Yeah. Liz?
Please face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic
for
which it
stands,
one nation,
under
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build
goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? We certainly hope so.
There you go. Jane, we have a visitor, but I'll let you introduce him.
Well, I see Aldo Amato, and I'm hoping that I am pronouncing your name correctly. And you mentioned earlier that you are in PR and marketing for the Nashville Sports Council, correct?
Correct, yes, and great job on the pronunciation.
Thank you, good. So we're thrilled to have you today. And did you say, whose guest did you say you are? Did you say Scott?
Scott Ramsey. He's
Ramsey?
our guest speaker today. So
great, awesome. Thank you, Scott, for inviting a guest today, and we're thrilled to have you. I don't see anybody else, Betsy.
I don't either. Anybody else have a guest or a visiting Rotarian? All right. Then today we're going to talk about happy bucks. Who's happy today? Oh man, come on, somebody's happy.
I'll go.
All right.
We dropped off our daughter at Emory last weekend, so she's settling in and obeying all the mask rules over there. And so we're excited for her to start her freshman year there. And then our oldest started his junior year at MTSU, so we're getting him settled in his apartment this week.
Wow.
So, and then our sophomore starts school Monday in person, so hoping that as well.
A lot of folks are starting in person on Monday, so we'll see absolutely how that goes. I know it's been an interesting time for parents as well as students with this virtual going on, but it seems to work fairly well. But I know everybody's ready to get back to the real thing. So
yes.
Any more happy bucks?
Betsy,
all right then. Go ahead, Larry.
I was going to say I'll do one, so we can have a couple anyway.
Okay.
Last week I was going to announce this later, but I'll go ahead and do it now because it's happy. I announced that we had a new sponsorship, the personal protection sponsorship, which was going to provide a mask and a hand sanitizer to everybody in our golf tournament. And I announced that was a $1,500 sponsorship that we'd like to sell. We sold it. And Michael Kaplan bought it. And he's going to have the mask and the hand sanitizers logoed with something about our park program that Sarah's heading up, our inclusion park program. So we're going to promote the park program and hopefully the fundraising part of that with the mask and the sanitizer. And so that was a big deal. And we're very thankful for Michael and for making that happen. It's going to be a special piece of our tournament, I think.
Yay! Yeah. And did you want to talk a little bit about the Baptist Children's Home while you got the floor? You're still muted, Larry. You want to talk a little bit about the grant for the Children's Home?
Oh, sure. So last week, as you saw part of the picture, a couple of weeks ago, I guess, there was an email that went out from the Baptist Children's Home to several different people. Keeley got it, and several other groups got it regarding their pantry, which is where they store their food for the, hold on just a minute.
He needs a treat.
Every time she hears anything outside, she barks, which is a good thing, but it's not right now a good thing. So anyway, their pantry, which is their where they store their food for their houses, and it was just basic stuff they wanted. And several groups, I know our church was involved in that, Brentwood Baptist, and so Keeley had thought originally about maybe getting our club involved in buying food items that were on this list. And so he and I talked and said, why don't we, instead of doing that and not knowing really what they need, why don't we just give them a nice cash donation? So he and I put our heads together and came up with $5,000 is a very appropriate, nice amount to give them. And so this past Tuesday, I was able to go over there and present to their new director, Darren Andrus, the check for $5,000 from our club and from the BRCCF. And obviously they were very appreciative of that. And Darren's very interested in our club. He had visited the morning club once, and so I told him that as soon as we got back to somewhat normalcy, I'd have him as a guest to our club and maybe even as a program. So, but they were very, very glad and very happy, obviously, to get that donation.
Very good. Rotary doing good in the community. I love it.
Right.
As far as meetings are concerned, I'll just reiterate what Keeley said last week, and that is that we will have our first combination in-person meeting along with Zoom meeting on October 2nd to kick off the foundation drive. Not quite sure where we're going to have that meeting yet. We're trying for Granny White Pavilion, but we'll see how that works out. But regardless, until further notice, we're definitely, even when we begin meeting in person, and we're keeping up with the Martin Center to find out when they're going to come back. We haven't heard from them yet as far as what their expectation is, but it doesn't look like it would be probably before the end of the year so far. But we're definitely going to keep doing Zoom meetings along with our in-person meetings if we finally get there. So just be aware of that. And we're going to try to make it remote as well. That way we can also have the recorded issue when people can't come to the meeting and they can't come to Zoom, they can still watch it on YouTube or our Facebook page. So anybody else have anything quickly before we go to our speaker?
I do. Yeah, I wanted to throw out there that I was able to find a sponsor to help provide goodies on 9/11, to provide cookies and some goodies. We're going to put baskets together. And my partner in crime, Betsy Crossley, is going to help me deliver to all the different stations. So I'm really excited that we'll be able to do something for them. So I'll keep y'all posted on that. But I was excited to hear about that.
Yes, and Sherry, as partners in crime, we will also be wearing masks to fit the part, so it works out
Yes.
great.
Hi.
Okay.
Betsy?
Yes, sir.
Betsy,
Go, Larry.
could I do a golf tournament update?
Oh, yes, sir. Please.
Real quick, we've got just some numbers of interest. We've got 43 hole sponsors from last year still outstanding. Now that's down significantly from what we had the last couple of weeks. We've lost 7 total sponsors, which is not bad for the number that we've had so far that just cannot participate. We've got 37 members of our club who have not participated in any way in the tournament. So I would obviously encourage those who have not participated to try to help us out. We've got 3 more weeks before the tournament. We're in okay shape financially. We're not going to make the money we budgeted to make, and I'm just really hoping we can make as much as we did last year. We could be close to that if some of these 43 hole sponsors that are still outstanding would come in. So everything's looking fine. As soon as you're starting to work on the personnel, we won't need as many people working at the tournament this year because we're going to cut back on a lot of the things that we do that involve personal contact. So we won't have as many workers, but we'll still need several volunteers, and she may be calling on y'all to help do that. So we're in pretty good shape. Obviously, we'd love for you to sell those hole sponsors that you sold last year, the same ones, to get a repeat on those, or at least let us know if they're not going to be involved. So that's it. We're in pretty good shape. We got 3 more weeks. Thank you.
There
Betsy,
you are, Cameron. Thank you. Yes.
Betsy, just wanted to let everyone know that I have been in touch with and emailing with Ron Yee, who is the president of the Brentwood Interact Club. And right now, they don't have a club. They don't have any officers. They don't have any members. And they don't even know when school is going to start. So he says that they have to post something at the school, and then they have to have signups, etc. So I don't even know when the Interact Club is going to get started, but I am in touch with Ron, and he's keeping me well posted.
COVID does amazing things that aren't really good. Hopefully they'll be able to get back, because that was a very, very active club.
Yes,
wow.
I know.
Yeah, wow. Anybody else? All right. Well, Hunter McCarty is going to introduce our speaker today, so I'll let you go, Hunter.
All right, thank you, Betsy. It's my pleasure to introduce Scott Ramsey today. As a graduate of Old Dominion University, where he attended on a golf scholarship, Scott Ramsey has over 30 years of experience in the sports marketing industry. Scott is currently responsible for the day-to-day activities for both the Nashville Sports Council and the Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl. During Ramsey's tenure with the Nashville Sports Council and Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl, the organizations have contributed a combined total of over $850 million in economic impact, hundreds of hours of national television coverage, and recruited and staged nearly 200 sporting events in Middle Tennessee. Recently, under Scott Ramsey's leadership, the Nashville Sports Council announced that Nashville will serve as the host city for the SEC men's basketball tournaments through 2035, with one exception in 2022, when Nashville will host the SEC women's basketball tournament. The Nashville Sports Council has been involved in the 2014 NCAA Women's Final Four, the NHL All-Star Weekend, the NFL Draft in April of 2019, and the 20th anniversary of the St. Jude's Rock and Roll Marathon and Half Marathon. Nashville also was recently selected to host the 2021 SEC Football Media Days for the first time in Music City. Ramsey and his wife, Amy, live in Hendersonville, Tennessee. They have 4 children, Peyton, Clark, Carly, Jessica, and Ray. So thank you very much, and we welcome Scott as our speaker today.
Thanks, Hunter. And thank you to Hunter. He's been one of our just great leaders in the community, part of our National Sports Council Board of Directors, and very supportive of a lot of events we've done, both personally and professionally. So Thanks, Hunter, and thanks for having me today. This is a new one for me, presenting via Zoom. We've had a lot of Zoom meetings, but this one is a little different. It usually has some pretty fun graphics, given the nature of what we do with sports and stuff like that. But I'll try to verbally maybe recap some stuff, and then be happy to take questions as time allows. A little bit of a background. I was able to move to Nashville in 1995, and at that time, we just started building what's now Bridgestone Arena. And a good friend of mine, Jenny Hannon, had started the Nashville Sports Council under the leadership of then Mayor Bredesen. And it was a time in the country that cities were really starting to look at sports and sports events as great business, great impacts to tourism. It was a time when cities and metropolitan governments were starting to invest in venues. And part of that venue was how do we maximize the use of those venues to get a return for the investment. So cities were starting to compete, very similar to how they compete for corporate headquarter relocations or major conventions. They're starting to compete for sporting events in the 90s. So Nashville got in the game in 92. I came down to join Jenny and the Sports Council in 95. And at that time, we had our first big event on the books, which is the U.S. Figure Skating Championships in 1997. That was going to be really within a couple months of opening the venue in February of 97, when it opened in December 96. So we certainly come a long way since 1995 as a city, and we feel like sports has played a major and a positive role in the growth economically and visibility-wise, and hopefully for the engagement of the citizens in the community. In 1998, we started the Music City Bowl. And at the time, per NCAA rules, you had to create a separate company, 501c3. So we technically still to this day, under the old-fashioned term of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, we still maintain two nonprofits, the Music City Bowl, Inc. and the Sports Council. So we have two board of directors, two nonprofit organizations, 2 fiscal years, but we share staff because we felt like from economies of scale and the ability to really streamline the mission of what we were trying to do, the two overlapped more than they competed. So we've maintained one of the few cities in the country that really maintain one organization under both banners. The mission really hasn't changed. Our board has reviewed the mission since the beginning in the 90s. But really, to summarize our mission and what we do as a sports council, different than the Sports Authority or the Preds or the Titans or the Sounds or Nashville SC and those kind of teams, and is to really think about how we can recruit events to our city that complement the regular season or the major events that we have in our city. We then flip our hat around. If we recruit an event, we manage those and represent the host city responsibilities. Those can range anywhere from just getting a few volunteers to major fundraising to major guarantees, a major operational execution with some of the events. We hope to really get 3 results out of it. Economic impact, fill up our hotels, fill up our restaurants, have people spend a lot of money. Great media coverage. Sports gets an inordinate amount of media coverage, and for these events that we've hosted have been very positive on Nashville, so we can showcase our city. And then lastly, hopefully improve and engage the citizens and the quality of life here. In the 25 years since I've been here, we've recruited and managed now over 60,000 volunteers to help us stage the event. When we've had almost 4.5 million spectators for these events. Now, those don't include NHL regular season, NFL regular season, the college football, college basketball, any of the things that's regular season. So these are the complementary events that we bid on and recruit. As a general sense, we typically are looking long-term. And I think given the situation that we're in now, obviously with COVID in the last several months, I mean, actually, we were right in the middle of the SEC tournament, the beginning of it, when everything got canceled on March 11th this year. So we've missed some events, but I think the fortunate thing for us is that we've already kind of filled that pipeline going forward. So we're very focused on how can we accelerate the recovery efforts economically for downtown through some of the events that we have on the books. So hopefully when this gets behind us and we get back to whatever the new normal is going to be, in 21 and 22, we're going to see maybe the best string of events from a diversity standpoint and also from a economic impact standpoint that we've seen in some time. So we've got a tremendous lineup. I'll kind of touch on that here in a little bit. But typically when we're looking 4, 5, 6 years out, I think we've really stayed true to who we've been since the beginning. We felt like we've had a city that has a collaboration between the public and the private sector, which is just imperative to put on big events. You have to have the support from the mayor's office, the city council, police, the fire, public works, all the necessary behind the scenes organizations to put on a major event. Secondly, our private sector in town have been very, very generous about their support, whether it's sponsorships or whether it's donations in support of the events. And then lastly, the partnership with professional teams. They manage the venues, they schedule venues, and they've been very aggressive to try to allow us to maximize the use of those events to maximize the return and the benefit. Lastly, the Metro Sports Authority, obviously an offshoot of Metro. It was created in the 90s when we built the arena and the stadium, and now the baseball stadium and the soccer stadium will fall under their purview. They're really the landlord for those facilities. They were able to issue the bonds via the legislature change in the 90s in the state. And the Sports Authority, managed by Monica Falk-Knudsen and us, work very closely together. So kind of think of us as that recruiting element out there for the events, and the Sports Authority more as the landlord for those events, overseeing the legal documents and the management and the capital improvements for the venues. So we work very closely together, and the collaboration again in our city has really set us apart. And it's not necessarily the case in every city. But we've really focused on our strengths, and we try to play to our strengths. Certainly the personality of Music City has allowed us to turn games into events, and events for 1 or 2 days into hopefully 3 or 4 days. And we've continued to kind of work on that for the events that we have annually, like the SEC basketball, the Rock and Roll Marathon, the Music City Bowl, but also for events that we've had in kind of those one-off scenarios, like the Women's Final Four, like the NHL All-Star Game, where we changed that whole dynamic of using that outdoor facility and outdoor area, to the NFL Draft, which was a record-setting by all accounts last year. So we focus on really our downtown campus, that we feel like around the country we have a better environment to create a campus energy, exciting event for the people that come to the event, as good as anybody in the country. Geography has helped us. We've seen travel change over, sports travel change to where it used to be, let's take the bowl games, for example. People used to want to get on the plane and fly to and spend the vacation week, whether it's South Florida or Southern California or Texas or Phoenix. Now we're seeing people want to hop in the car and come for 3 or 4 days, have fun, and get home and not spend that kind of time where there's planes and rental cars and all those kind of things. So geography for where we're located in central part of the United States has been a huge plus for us. Our venues have really turned out to be huge positives for us, especially the arena. The arena backstage has a lot of flexibility. For the Women's Final Four, for the SEC basketball, we're able to use rehearsal hall as a media center that most arenas don't have. Domes have, but we're able to have an arena setting with the excitement and the sold out noise and capacity to play in, but also back of house, being able to hold 200 or 300 or 400 media in a work setting, and TV folks, that's a little unique. And then lastly, over the years, it's on our industry, and it's probably like a lot of others, the reputation and the experience that people have here have been very positive. We don't get to bid on an event that's going to happen next week. So you continually kind of bid on things, and you're looking long term, and some of those reputations and experiences continue to build. And right now, that's been a very positive for us. Just to touch on a couple events and kind of just give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain on how we operate. Music City Bowl, for example. Certainly college football this year, and I wish I had answers to everybody of how it's going to play out. Obviously, some conferences aren't playing, some are playing. We hope they're going to play. Schedules are changed around and adjusted. But we really started the Music City Bowl from a business platform. The referendum had just passed on what's now Nissan Stadium, and the challenge from Mayor Bredesen at that time to Chamber of Commerce, the CVB, the Sports Council was, how do we find a way to use an open air stadium that's new to our city, more than 10 NFL games a year, 2 preseason and 8 regular season. And at that time, bowl games were not as prevalent as they are now. There were only 17 of them, or 18, I think. I think we were 18th or 19th. And it was an opportunity for us to really look at that week. That was the slowest week of tourism annually in our city between Christmas and New Year's. The late John Fleming, who was a longtime GM at the Renaissance Hotel, who was a big supporter, said that was a week he gave everybody vacation. Now, if you think about it, that's really one of the busiest weeks that we have in the entire year, outside of CMA Fest and a few others. And the bowl is really kind of the catalyst for that. We've certainly added the New Year's Eve concert, but it's a chance for us to really kind of market the city in a time that there really wasn't a lot of other business opportunities. We've had 22 years. I think we've exceeded expectations from that platform. We thought a 3-hour show on ESPN and getting 30 or 40,000 people was going to be a huge positive, but we've averaged almost 56,000 people, which is in the top 10 in all bowls in the country. The last 5 years, we've averaged almost 5 million viewers on ESPN. We just negotiated with the Big Ten and the SEC a new 6-year agreement, which will align out with the college football playoff in 6 years at the end of that term, where we'll have the highest selections of anything we've ever had. It's going to get derailed a little bit this year. We're not sure what the game is going to look like. The SEC is going to play, and hopefully, even though the Big Ten doesn't, we'll be able to look at the Big 12 or the ACC and have some sort of game. Whether or not we have fans or not is to be determined. So this year is a little bit different, but I think the next 5 years with the Big Ten, SEC is going to see really record returns for us. We didn't really think when we started the game 22 years ago that we would already had 1.2 million people attend the game, or it deliver almost 350 million economic impact. We've had almost 100 million people watch the game, and certainly exceeded our expectation for what that game delivered in that time of year. If you flip that to the Sports Council, as we kind of look at the annual calendars, we typically look 4 or 5 years out. I think the next 2 years, we're really ready to hit that accelerator to help the recovery process. We start in March in 21 with the SEC men's basketball tournament. As Hunter mentioned, we just completed a couple years ago the longest term for any event like that in the country, securing that event through 2035, which is a home run event for us. It's 4 days of sold out arena. It's 4 or 5 days of filled hotels in downtown. So we start with the SEC basketball in March. We come back with our St. Jude Rock and Roll Marathon and Half Marathon in late April. It's its usual date. In the last several years, they've raised over $2 million in just that one day for St. Jude, which has been just a great piece of that race, in addition to averaging about 35,000 runners coming for the weekend in April. In May, we have the NCAA golf men's regionals out at the Golf Club of Tennessee, where we're partnering with Vanderbilt to run. In July, as Hunter mentioned, we have for the first time the SEC football media days, which, if it holds true in the way it's typically been held, that's over 1,200 media here for a week. It's 4 straight days and nights of ESPN broadcasts in the middle of the summer. We're going to host that at the new Nashville Yards Grand Hyatt, and really try to create a fan engagement element to that to the best we can. Certainly planning, as we all know right now, is everything's tentative in the next few months, but the planning on that's underway. Certainly, I think you've probably seen in the news recently, not only a renovation of the Nashville Super Speedway east of town by Dover Motorsports and the hiring of a new president, but hopeful that a NASCAR race will return in the next year or two. You've certainly seen probably that Roger Penske was in town, hopefully finalizing a new IndyCar race that will be downtown, a Grand Prix street race in next summer in and around the stadium and in and around downtown, which would be a pretty spectacular visual and opportunity to showcase the city. Those things are in the works, which could happen again in 21. And then we come back for the bowl game, followed immediately by early January, the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, which will select the Olympic team in January of 22. And then we go into the women's and rock and roll marathon again. So in about 14 months there, we've got a string of about 12 or 13 events that could generate $250, $300 million in spending for our city and untold hours of television coverage. So hopefully we can help recovery pretty quickly once we get going. I know the tourism industry has really suffered through this as much as any industry, and they've been great partners of ours and a big part of what we've been doing. So again, maybe I'll pause there and I'd be glad to take some questions. How we're kind of organized and funded. We've got 2 nonprofit boards. We're a membership organization on the Sports Council. We'd love for people to be a member. We'd love for people to volunteer. We've got a great young professionals group that's getting going with our staff. But certainly, the community-wide support for our events has certainly allowed us to be successful in our area. And we certainly appreciate a lot of folks. I recognize a lot of people here seeing their pictures today of people who've been involved with us down the road. So why don't I stop there? I'll be glad to take some questions, and hopefully I can answer some, if not all of them.
Scott, we've had some folks. What we do is we usually get folks to submit by chat, so we have some lined up for you here.
Okay.
How are you guys involved with Major League Baseball coming here?
Well, it's probably pretty similar to the I would say Nashville SC. Right now, I mean, typically when you're looking at major professional sports, there are 3 key components to the professional thing on the very front end. 1, ownership. 2, venue. And 3, a relationship with the city. Right now, I know there's a group that's organized. I'm not sure if they've identified an owner yet who will kind of really sit down with the city. We've always been in that support role where, and I'll take the soccer as an example. Once John Ingram really started moving forward with the MLS expansion bid and all of that, we were really kind of a support organization for some of that process. But it's really going to turn down to a negotiation between the owner and the mayor on getting that launched. Now, at this point in time, we know we're going to have a stadium. We've already bid on the NCAA Women's Soccer Championship for 23 or 24 at the NCAA to have at the new stadium. We're working with them on other events, whether it's MLS All-Star games or whatever. So we will then kind of quickly kind of work with the team and the owner to how we can supplement and complement the usage of their venue. But right now in Major League Baseball, I would say until there's a specific owner identified and they start really talking specifically, we just kind of stayed in touch with them and help where they needed help.
Gotcha. Speaking of soccer, when are we going to know if we're going to be a host city for at least one round of the World Cup? And follow that by how has COVID affected all this?
Well, the World Cup in 2026 is a North American host. So there'll be a combination of cities for those host round games in Canada, United States, and Mexico. That will be determined by FIFA, the international organization that oversees soccer. They have not made those decisions yet on which cities will host which rounds and how they will kind of move around those 3 countries. Everybody's pretty well reported that the U.S. will get the majority of those sites. But within the U.S. right now, off the top of my head, Betsy, I'm not going to quote you the right numbers, but there's probably 2 or 3 cities that out of the group that's still available or still pursuing it, probably won't get games. So I still think they've got to pare that down to some degree. Now that'll be based on obviously facilities. It'll be based on time zones. It'll be based on geography. And that'll be a decision that'll be made, we think, in the next year to year and a half by FIFA.
Okay. All right. Moving to one other sport. When do you think, and maybe if we might get a Super Bowl one day here, what would that take?
Well, I get that question a lot. I really think it's going to be a challenge with a current open air stadium on natural grass in the Mid-South. And that's not a knock on Nashville, because I think we could serve as hosts as well as any city has ever done, as evidenced by the draft. So you never say never, but I think it's certainly going to be difficult to compete with some of the brand new stadiums that can really create either guaranteed weather in some places, or put it under a dome where they can control the environment. I would group that up, Super Bowl as well as the national championship, college football playoff, and the men's Final Four. Those are three events right now that are going to be really difficult with our current facility. Men's Final Four, for example, you have to have 50,000 seats under roof to bid on that event. So they host those in domes. So I think as the next few years play out, there's still 9 years left, I believe, in the current lease agreement between the Titans and the city. And so as that kind of plays out, that could determine our ability to bid on those three events.
Yeah. Talked a little bit about possible Indy. How about having a Grand Prix race? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think, I mentioned that previously. I know Roger Penske and some of the Mark Miles and some of the IndyCar folks were in town yesterday and today, meeting with the organizers of the Grand Prix and some of their key investors. And hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll have some sort of answer from them. I know they're shooting to start in 21 if possible and get it on the IndyCar schedule. It would be a street race. It would probably be tied into the Nissan Stadium to some degree. I haven't seen the projected route, but hopefully, those discussions will move along, and that would be a pretty exciting couple days and great visual for our city. And again, be a great way to kind of get back, hopefully bring a lot of people to our city next summer.
I think it's just fascinating that we're talking about such a diversity of sports that really would fit into our venue. It's amazing what you actually have to deal with, and you seem to be very knowledgeable about all of it. Had another question from our golf person here, Larry Kane. Any more discussions on a PGA event coming here? I know Brant's been talking about it.
Yeah. And Larry probably knows as well, but it's been an ongoing conversation about a tour event. I think there's really three key components or three legs of the stool that you've got to line up. One, you got to line up a date on their calendar. That's broadcast, and that's schedule, and that's everything. And right now, there's not many openings week-wise to get on the calendar. And you'd like to have a week that can really have a good likelihood of a really strong field with a lot of top players here, rather than, maybe a fall season kind of event. Secondly, a tile sponsor. Certainly we've had some incredible headquarter relocations. You'd like to think one could come locally from some of the companies that have been involved in golf, or could the PGA Tour have somebody in the wings ready to do something in Nashville? And then third, obviously, is facility. Where is the golf course? Where is it located? Are they willing to give it up for the amount of time dedicated to give it up, and the infrastructure needed to build the suites and the corporate hospitality and all the necessary elements to make it a success? We just haven't been able to kind of line up all those three: the dates on the calendar with the tour, the right tile sponsor ready to go, and the course. So I'm hopeful. I know Brant's hopeful. And certainly, we've got a Corn Ferry event, and Brant's very involved in that. Tennessee Golf Foundation is going to be managing that more and more locally. So hopefully that'll be a launching point to getting on the PGA Tour schedule here in the near future.
Just in general, we had a question about if you're bidding on an event, what are the basic considerations that you go into when you're going to go into that bid? And that follow-up question is also, do you think that the improvements that Doug's made out at B&A are going to help us bid for more events here in the city?
The improvements of B&A, absolutely. Because I think as you look at big events, again, we really take advantage of that drive-to market to Nashville, but also the ability to fly in, and the amount of hotel rooms that we've been building as well is helping us from a large event, because that was a real challenge when they were at capacity for the next 4 or 5 years to bid on an event and get the necessary hotel rooms to put in. To bid on events, let me try to wrap that real quickly here of those. I mean, typically the process is the rights holder, whether it be the NCAA, the SEC, IndyCar, whatever, will send an RFP for an event. NFL, NHL will send an RFP for the event, or request for proposal to multiple cities. Within that document, there's all kinds of things that they ask the host city to make available. Everything from hotel rooms to rates, the venue and rates, to sometimes financial guarantees, transportation, logistics, shuttles, volunteers, hospitality events, entertainment elements. And so every package is a little bit different. Our checklist locally is been pretty consistent. One, when is the event? It's very difficult in our town in the second week of June during CMA Fest to go bid on a major event. So we try to see if it fits in our city's calendar. Secondly, then we go to the respective venues. Does it fit in the venue calendar? And then lastly, can we pull together all the necessary resources to make that bid what we think successful? And then financial pieces add up. For example, in the U.S. Figure Skating Championships, we're going to have to do significant fundraising to meet a guarantee that we gave to them. That was very similar in the NFL Draft, NHL All-Star Game, Women's Final Four, and SEC basketball. So we pulled together all the partners, both public and private sector, hospitality sector, the venues, and we typically look 4 or 5 years out and we say, hey, these could be the events that come available for us. What fits, what doesn't, and we normally walk out of there with a list. Say, hey, we're going to pursue these, and hopefully we can land some, if not all of them. So that's kind of the thumbnail version of it before you get into the details. But it's been a very successful process for us.
Do you always wait for RFPs, or do you actually go out and get some?
It works both directions, but typically the organizations have a timeline of when they're going to bid events. So they may say, hey, we're going to bid the next 5 years of certain events out. The NCAA Women's Soccer Championship we're bidding on, they're bidding out 4 years. And they're not going to bid those again until about 2 or 3 years, and they're going to bid the next 4 years. So a lot of times they'll bid out groups of years in cycles. And so that kind of creates your timeline a little bit. If we see that we have some holes in certain years and certain times of years or certain venues, then we'll try to kind of pursue certain events that maybe is a little shorter term kind of lead time.
Right. Do you have any idea what's going on with the ownership of the Wilson County Racetrack and any events coming there?
Sorry, I do not on that one.
Okay. All right. Back to a golf question. Which golf courses in Middle Tennessee do you think would be good candidates for PGA events?
Oh, that's put me on the spot.
I know.
Especially as I think you're looking at a couple things. One, I think you're looking at a course that can be challenging enough for that level of play, which is incredible. And then if you're looking at the private golf courses, the question is to the membership, are you willing to give it up and know you've got some logistical changes to make to be able to fit in all the necessary operations at the course. And then lastly, I think when you look at some of the newer courses south of town that maybe are built with a little bit more land, a little bit better infrastructure to host those events, do you want to have an event that outside the city and still be able to connect downtown for either entertainment events, hotel usage, or things like that, and shuttle a lot of people? Now, that's not unusual, but I think, it's one thing you got to take in for granted. So, but again, I think the tour is looking at us. I think we got to get the other two pieces in place as well. One, where does it fit in the calendar during the year? And does that fit for Nashville on their calendar? And then secondly, who could be our lead sponsor? Because most events now are a $10 to $15 million week that you've got to raise for tour between charity purses, the player purse, operational expenses, and things like that. So, it's not an inexpensive venture to make sure you got all those things lined up correctly to be successful.
Wow. Well, we congratulate you on all your success in the past. And I know with all we've heard today, even though the last 6 months has been very challenging, and maybe the next 6 might be as well, that you're really doing a great job, and we are missing our sports. So keep it up so we can see them once again, and that would really be fantastic. Thank you again.
Well, thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Appreciate that. Let's see. Speaking of sports, make sure you guys keep working on your golf tournament sponsors if you can. And we want to thank again Aldo and Scott both for visiting today. Join us virtually again in person if you can. We'd love to have you come sit in with us again. Club members, please remember the Fiddlers and the Stokes and the Wheelwrights in your thoughts and prayers. And of course, also the folks that just went through a lot of trouble here in Louisiana affected by Hurricane Laura. Remember, we're not going to be meeting next week. Rather, I hope we'll all be enjoying a well-deserved Labor Day. Also, on September 11th, as we said, we won't be able to meet in person with our first responders. Sherry and I will be delivering those goodies, but even though we can't be together that day, I hope that we'll all remember to honor them and pray for these men and women for their continual heroic and selfless acts that they do every day for us on the job. Fortunately, we will have a speaker on Zoom September 11th. While we won't be meeting with the first responders, we will have Roland Myers, the president and CEO of the Tennessee Retail Association. And he comes highly recommended. He'll be our speaker that you don't want to miss. So join us for that virtual meeting on September 11th. Any more announcements or club business for the good of Rotary? All right, there being none then, according to President Keeley, be safe, stay healthy, and keep serving. We adjourn.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, that's fast.